Thank you. Thank you for your remarks today. Thank you for your leadership. It's a privilege for the Walton Family Foundation to be in partnership with you, and I think I speak for everybody in this room in expressing a deep and sincere gratitude to you for your leadership across the years. So thank you. Please.
Thanks, Mark.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Patricia whispered to me as you started your speech that at the first conference, perhaps before you had the wisdom to invite your mom, a month before the conference, less than 50 people were registered. So here we are today, 1,100 strong, and
Thank God for Barbara Bush.
well, thank God for you. I have some questions for you that I think will attempt, Governor, to draw out your thinking on some of the themes that you've expressed here, themes that relate to the moment we're in, which is, I think is fair to say, a quite different moment than 10 years ago.
Sure it is.
At your first conference. You talked about the unique politics of this moment. You talked about rebuilding a coalition of the willing. You talked about a race against time. So as we step into this chapter, let's start with a basic question. What are the lessons that you are taking with you from the last decade, the greatest lessons from education reform for this next chapter?
Well, I'd say the greatest lesson, the single most important lesson is that political leadership really matters. That ideas have consequences, but only when they're implemented. Only when people have the courage and the creativity to figure out a way to take something that's not working as well as it needs to and transform it. And there have been incredible examples over the last 10 years of how that has worked. Mitch Daniels would be a great example, followed up by Governor Pence and Governor Holcomb. There's a sustained effort to continue to reform in Indiana that's remarkable. New governors are doing the same thing. Governor Haslam is, to his credit, done extraordinary work. So leadership matters, and encouraging leaders in the legislature and governors particularly to be big and bold is the first step in this, because you can't do it without their support. You can't do it without their willing to take risks. And that's more difficult now because the climate politically has changed. You're not as rewarded as once, I feel like I'm like prehistoric governor. There were rewards for doing big things when I was governor, or at least I thought there were. Maybe there weren't and I just played like there were, but now I think people are really fearful of doing the big things. So lesson number one is to really encourage and so be supportive. Don't abandon people that are doing big things. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's messy. It's really messy to get it right. There's going to be failures and missteps along the way. The other thing about reform that I think we've lost, education should not be a partisan issue. There are enough partisan things that we can fight over, but education, when it works, we need to have broader coalitions, broad reform, left-right coalitions, and that's been tattered. I know you work on this a lot, Mark, and I think that still exists, but it's not as strong as the reaction to reform, the reactionaries, I would politely call them, on the left and the right that are opposed to any change and basically are defending the status quo under the guise of local control. Well, my idea of a local control would have parents be empowered to make choices for their children. Ultimately, that's the most local you could get.
Yeah.
But people are resisting these things, and then on the left, of course, there's resistance, and they attack accountability. They see the vulnerabilities of testing, high standards. All these things are under attack, and we've lost the battle for the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. I think we can regain it, though, and that's a key element of reform.
Let's dwell on this for a second, because the idea of bipartisanship itself at this moment can feel prehistoric. Is it nice to have, or is it necessary to have?
Well, it depends on the state in many ways, but look, you think about it, look at Washington, Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, the efforts made by the Republicans to repeal Obamacare had no bipartisan support. And by definition, they probably weren't going to sustain themselves because of that. Big things happen when you garner, maybe not at the beginning, but at the end, you have to constantly be building coalitions to provide the sustainability of any big idea that's being implemented. And that doesn't exist because partisanship has supplanted that. Mm-hmm. So, I hope this contagion hasn't spread in every state capital, but there's a little bit of this happening all around, which is that if someone on your team does something, was on the other guy's team, does something really bad, you know, politicians will rip the guy's head off. And then the exact same thing happens by someone on your team, and there's like crickets, no noise at all. And that just builds this tribalism that makes it harder to get to broad-based reform. And this is a place, I think education is one of the few places that shouldn't be ideological necessarily or partisan. It's about children versus, where we are and where we need to be. It's about, are we focusing all our efforts on the economic interests of the adults in the system, or are we empowering parents? These are bigger issues where people on the left and people on the right need to converge and not go back into our tribes to fight another fight. We got a way to go on this.
Yeah.
This is a big challenge. This is something all of us need to constantly work on. When I was governor, I tried to find ways, not with success all the time. The instinct was, whatever the idea was, find someone who didn't look like me and who on many other issues didn't think like me or didn't agree with me to be my partner. It's kind of the Nixon to China policy making, and we need more of that. We need to kind of change people's thinking, get them out of the paradigm of this is all one big food fight.
Yeah. And so is that your advice to the 1,100 policymakers, lawmakers today?
Yeah. Make friends with people on the other side. Find coalitions on discrete issues where there is broad agreement, and make sure that that you're inclusive in your efforts to build these coalitions. There's strong support. You look at all the polling, there's strong support for vouchers and for charter schools across the country. And we need to take advantage of that. And then the other final thing about reform, and this is the lesson in Florida more than other places, is build constituencies around reform. So in Florida, we have scale now, and my guess is the corporate tax scholarship program, thanks to the efforts of Step Up for Children, John Kirtley's in the room, and the families that take advantage of that program, 135,000, 140,000 students go to a private school. They don't want to lose that.
No.
And that's changed the dynamics politically because their elected officials don't want them angry at them.
Yeah. This seems inarguable and is good counsel for us and for everyone in the room. Let's talk about accountability for a moment, where the concept you're laying out is, which again is inarguable, is going to be challenged, is being challenged. In this moment. I would say we, Walton, a lot of people in the room are worried about an unholy alliance that is challenging some basic ideas about accountability that make your work and the work of the people in this room more difficult at this moment.
This is a big deal because on the one hand, I at least advocate a total transformation away from the system we have, which challenges the accountability system we have in that system, right? I mean, if you're saying you want to move to a personalized learning model where kids learn at their own pace and we're not pushing students along and we're not holding students back, well, the accountability system we have, the testing assessment system needs to be adapted. On the other hand, in the interim, while we're moving towards that system, you want to maintain the assessment system because if you don't measure, you don't really care, and kids will immediately fall back. So it's a very difficult challenge. You have to plan for what the future looks like, and at the same time, deal with the vulnerabilities of accountability. I'd say the one vulnerability that can be fixed is to have fewer, better tests. So when we did the research in Florida, local school districts are the ones that impose the test, the multitude of tests. The state really imposes a test grades 3 through 10 in a variety of subjects. That's the end of test exam that measures effectiveness of schools. Well, you need to limit the number of tests that create this environment where we're over-testing our kids, which is done by the local school districts, many of whom oppose the accountability system, by the way. Yeah. And then secondly, make sure the tests are also diagnostic. So move them towards the end of the year so teachers are teaching the full year rather than through March and then give up because it doesn't matter anymore. Making sure the tests get back to the teacher that was teaching the kids so they can learn what they did right and what they did wrong. More importantly, making sure that the teachers that are receiving these students get the test results. And even more importantly than that, making sure parents get it before the start of the year. Make it much more transparent and useful, and I think the accountability system will be protected because the vulnerability that the people against any kind of change, they see the testing as the place to go.
What is your prophecy on how this debate ends?
My prophecy? Wow, I don't do that. I don't do prophecies, Mark. My prediction, perhaps? That's a little more humble.
Come on.
Old Testament guy. That took me back a notch. I'm not sure what. I probably need that, so that's good. Look, I think we win this if we're effective in the 50 states, realizing that this is an issue. It's worth supporting accountability. The states that comply with the ESSA rules with a kaleidoscope of colors. Come on, man. I mean, you don't know purple and mauve and red and blue, which is good and which is bad. Parents don't know, teachers don't know. It's all designed to cloud that up. That has to be held, you have to put a light on that and show that that's absurd. And we need to support the more transparent accountability efforts for sure and make it easier for parents to embrace it because all the polling I see shows that the parents particularly want accountability. They just don't want their kids stressed out by being tested.
Yeah. Let's shift from accountability to jobs and the economy. And you talked about the Drive to 55, which is as good an idea as is out there in the country about connecting education to real problems that governors and mayors and lawmakers are trying to solve.
By the way, just for the record, there are no people in Tennessee driving at 55 miles an hour on the highways. Just for the record, I noticed that. The marketing department may need to go back to drive to 75, I think, but anyways.
How in your view, do we draw education, and I would say education reform, closer to the problem that is top of mind for governors and mayors?
This is a huge opportunity to bring resources to the reform movement and to provide support outside the system on behalf of students. I see this as a path towards the transformation we need to get to. If you look at K-12 education kind of as a ecosystem in and of itself, that it has no connectivity to anything of relevance in our own lives, well, fine, it is what it is, and we fight on the margins. But if it's inculcated into the broader question of how do we make sure the next generation can live a life of purpose and meaning by having the skills to get the jobs that don't exist today. Mm-hmm. That's a different challenge that requires a lot more involvement by business leaders, by moving to a seamless K for life kind of learning environment, pre-K to life learning environment. So this is a place where governors particularly, but we're working, Patricia, how many states now? 40 states? Almost every state we work in, this is a place where Democrats, everybody believes that we need to create a career pathway kind of way that doesn't track people, but allows for more options for students in a world that requires it. So this is a huge opportunity in my mind to tear down the old order on behalf of students. Yeah. So we're excited about it, really excited about it. And the old days, when I ran for governor a long, long time ago, I went to visit 250 schools. And you go to the back of the high school and there'd be a shop class. Yeah. And the Vokies were in there. They called themselves that, and the other people that were hoity-toity, taking the regular classes, which weren't that hot back then either, they would kind of look down their nose at the Voc Ed people. That's not what we're talking about here. No. What we're talking about is making sure that you have the skill sets to be able to take on jobs that are going to require higher learning skills than going to college. Yeah. That's for sure. So this is really exciting to raise standards, raise expectations, provide more options, make learning more relevant, get new players into the classroom to teach because they have subject matter expertise. I think the business community can play a huge role here by creating what the standard is that's not direct to their own corporation, but what's required to be an X or a Y or a Z, and make that the benchmark. rather than what the existing standards are for.
You think higher ed is a willing partner in this?
Higher ed is struggling on their own.
Yeah.
They're really struggling because the walls are closing in. You can't keep raising tuition on the backs of students, and you can't keep giving them irrelevant degrees. A psych major is great. You learn certain things, but a psych major is probably going to graduate school.
Yeah.
Maybe we skip over that part and go to the graduate school and still get the learning that you get during the 4-year process.
So the optimistic view, though, is that there's some kind of alignment of a need to change across.
Yeah, and there are people like Michael Crow at Arizona State University, Mitch Daniels at Purdue. These are great universities that are thinking completely differently about their role in life today. And they're not tied to the 4-year model that you measure, by the way, graduation rates in 6 years, which is absurd. Full-time students, we measure their graduation rate in 6 years.
Yeah.
That's so dishonest that someone should call that out. I try, no one listens, but there's going to be transformation in the higher ed space as well that moves to this new system. For sure, it's essential.
So governors are thinking about jobs. We have some governors who are recovering right now from a rough hurricane season. And I wonder, as the former governor of a state that is used to this, perhaps, if not exactly this, as that recovery takes place in Puerto Rico, in Texas, and Florida, and as we prepare for more of this, how should this community get involved?
Well, first of all, in the places where this devastation took place, don't lower expectations on the students. So Puerto Rico may be a different example since they haven't opened up schools yet, which is an unbelievable
Remarkable.
Tragic. Unbelievable. I mean, power's not on in half the island. But when in 2004, we had 4 hurricanes, Cat 4, 2 Cat 4s, 2 Cat 3s. The next year we had 4 more. It was devastating, and the school districts, and I've read it already for Irma.
Right.
There are several of our superintendents in the big school districts. Well, we need to delay the test. We need to do this. We need to do that. Horse pucky. I mean, come on. This is not the thing to do. What you need to do is to show the resiliency that's necessary to succeed. You need to be supportive of those families and make sure that you get back to business as usual as quickly as possible. So Charlotte County, it's a beautiful county in southwest Florida, got hit by Hurricane Charlie. Basically 3/4 of the schools were wiped out. They opened for business within 3 weeks. They had a high school where high school started at 7 to 1 and then from 1:30 to 6 or something like that. They shared, the 2 high school rivals shared the same school. We didn't change the date for the dreaded FCAT test, the state assessment test. Those schools, DeSoto County, Charlotte County, that showed incredible resiliency to get back on track, also showed that they had greater gains than the parts of the state that weren't hit by the hurricanes. That's human nature when you organize yourself and inspire people to be bigger and better. That's what happens. And kids are smarter and more resilient than we give them credit for. So I worry that we end up, like. Now, it's incumbent upon us to be engaged in this. And in Florida's case, people act on their heart and are fully engaged in it. They're involved in the classroom. They're not letting this tragedy hold them back. In Houston, I think the same thing is happening. In Puerto Rico, it is, but the devastation has just been so incredible that you need to have a little more patience. The final thing I'd say is Rahm Emanuel is probably right. One of the classic things he said, don't let a good crisis go to waste or whatever. This is a chance to, in the case of Puerto Rico particularly, to transform an education system, to build it from scratch, to answer the question that I always love trying to answer and thinking about, and we all ought to think this way. If we didn't have what we have, how would we do it? If we didn't do it this way, how would we do it? And Puerto Rico has that chance now, and maybe, as the case was New Orleans, had huge benefits from Katrina in terms of education. An enormous tragedy turned over the long haul to benefit a lot of students. Maybe when the $98 billion request by the Puerto Rican governor is adjusted and modified and is approved in some fashion, there should be some chance for the charter school community, particularly, to get actively engaged in Puerto Rico to improve student learning.
So last question from me. No more prophecies, I promise. but I do, you are now famous for your BHAGs. Big, hairy, audacious goals. And this is a moment where all of us need to be thinking that way. So maybe you can close, Governor, with 3, 2, your list of, your short list of BHAGs that should be driving our thinking and moving us forward.
Well, one clearly has to be school choice across the board in every fashion: homeschool, charter school, private schools, corporate tech scholarships, ESAs for sure, vouchers for kids, families that have learning disabilities to customize their chance to be successful. We have the most diverse student population. I guess it's 74 million students, at least based on the blog that I read occasionally.
Yeah.
74 million students, most diverse population ever in American history, and we should begin to customize the learning experience by creating school choice. And for those that think, well, it's not fair that private schools don't have the same level of accountability, the accountability is a mom that loves their child with their heart and soul. And I put that above anything else. So an informed parent will create a catalyst for all schools to get better. Secondly, I think we need to move to this customized or personalized learning experience for more students. And there's great work being done. The Chan Zuckerberg initiative is just extraordinary. If it's successful in creating, irrefutable proof that children learn in different ways and they can learn at a faster pace, they don't have to be held back, that the social aspects of education won't diminish. All these big challenges we face to transform the education system, there's a lot of people willing to put a lot of money and a lot of research into it, and we should all be encouraging that for sure. And then I would say this should be a lifelong pursuit.
Yeah.
The biggest BHAG of all is to say the world we're in, K-12 isn't the beginning, it's not the end, it's the beginning, and we should create a system where everybody has a chance to retool and be purposeful for as long as they can.
Great.
Thanks, Mark.
As Patricia comes up, let me just close where we began by expressing, on behalf of everybody here, Governor Bush, our gratitude to you for your leadership and for bringing us together today. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thanks for coming.